Every year around the beginning of summer, E3 returns to Los Angeles, California to showcase the latest in games and gaming technology, but sometimes things don't go as planned, and perhaps the most infamous example of a conference that we've experienced in the modern era is the 2005 Sony press conference at E3, where they introduced the PlayStation 3. So I thought today it would be fun to go back and revisit the infamous conference just to see how it holds up today. What can we deduce from what they were showing? What was real? What was fake? And to do that, I am joined today by Rich Ledbetter. How are you today, Rich?
Not bad. Looking forward to this one, John.
And on my left, I have the latest addition to the Digital Foundry team, our new PC gaming expert, Alex.
Hey, John. I remember this, and I'm not sure if I want to remember this.
All right, so let's get started. So the thing about these conferences back in the day that I always found interesting was like Sony would really lean into the presentation in terms of like bar charts and just standing on stage and talking. And of course, as you can see here, it's our good buddy Kaz Hirai. You guys remember Kaz, right?
He's a legend, obviously, yeah. One thing that is slightly concerning, though, is the kind of glancing to the mid-distance there, which I assume is the auto cue. And it kind of makes him look a bit shifty.
Yeah.
The question is, when they were recording it itself, this is the direct feed that you have gotten, John. But was he actually looking into cameras at all at this point in time?
Well,
because it is a little awkward.
I assume it's just the auto cue over there in the distance, and he's just like reading his speech. But you know, that's how it goes. But the way this is filmed, this is probably Sony's direct feed that they had available on site.
Yeah, so should we talk about how you actually got this footage? Because it is remarkable in that it is a 60 hertz feed of a conference that happened, God knows how many years ago.
Yeah, so this in itself is kind of a retro-y style thing where back in the day, like the internet obviously wasn't great for streaming video. And so this is on a DVD, like an actual DVD of E3. And there were several. GameSpot did them. This one is like Next Gen Videos or something, I think. Yeah, but they basically put out a DVD set. You got a disc for Sony, you got a disc for Microsoft, disc for Nintendo, and they actually record in 480i the full. It's basically a 60 hertz feed, so you actually get to see the games running as they were designed to run. And in the cases of real-time demos, you get some 60 FPS action.
Good stuff. So what's actually happening here? Has any of the notorious stuff actually happened yet?
No, so I think at this point there was the anticipation, right? They're like just talking about like the history of the PlayStation, how great they were, and it was like PS1, 3D, PS2 was like the motion engine stuff, and then very high concept, I think, at this point in the conference.
Yeah, but there's also the context of what's happening now. As you were saying earlier, John, this conference was coming out already after the Microsoft Xbox 360 had been revealed. We had already seen a bit of the Wii at this point.
No. The Wii, I don't think the Wii had been unveiled. It was still called the Revolution. That would come later. That was like TGS.
Did we also know at the time, though, that the Wii would be lacking in hardware in comparison to the other ones?
Nobody knew much about the Revolution at this point.
Okay.
This was so just to put this in a place in history. And right before this, maybe a month or so, Sony did a special Microsoft did a special on MTV unveiling the Xbox 360, and the initial reveal wasn't actually that positive. Like, people looked at it and said, well, this isn't a huge upgrade at all. I mean, that's what bore out Wall Guy, the Perfect Dark Zero screenshot.
Yeah.
It wasn't great, but obviously we know how things went with history. But Microsoft was a little more honest, I think, with revealing what the 360 was going to be, and they showed stuff that was actually not only very achievable, but kind of lowballing what the 360 could do versus
1.5.
Yeah, so
yeah, there were the conferences, and then there was what they were actually showing. I was actually at this E3 but didn't see the conferences, so on the show floor there was absolutely nothing on PlayStation 3, but there was a showing of Xbox 360 stuff, including Need for Speed, which was running on it was running on a dev kit, which was a Mac at that point, which I understand was actually overclocked as well. But, there was some good stuff there. They had Call of Duty 2, which was running at 60 hertz or attempting to hit 60 hertz, and it looked really good. So, in terms of what was actually being delivered at E3 2005 from the Microsoft side, it was kind of better than what we'd actually seen in the preceding sort of launch materials. And then Sony has to come in and kind of trump that, and here we go.
Yeah, and so this is a great part, because this is still, you know, Ken Kutaragi rolls out in his like Yakuza get up there. It's like his white onesie with that, like, he looks pretty prestigious there. Like, you want to bow in respect when you see this man.
I think he looks magnificent. Those trousers.
I love it.
The
It's
belt,
amazing.
It's
Only
phenomenal.
he could rock that outfit.
Yeah, this is not something that just anybody could do.
I think we're going to be seeing a whole number of remarkable sartorial choices for this particular conference, but it's starting off strong, isn't it?
Yeah. But it's also kind of like today, like the way conferences are run, it's very like direct. Like, here's like a footage and new games, and they just kind of quick fire this stuff, where he's actually coming out and like really like just talking about what they're gonna do. Like, they haven't shown anything yet.
Yeah, but if you think about the Scorpio reveal at E3 last year, we had this massive CG sort of take on the processor and the main board, and here we've got a white slide with the word PlayStation 3 written on it. So there is a slight, you know, evolution in approach over the years, I think.
Yeah,
Yep.
This is more boardroom than some sort of press conference reveal that we're used to these days, at least.
I think it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, no, it's quite entertaining.
Oh, the emotion engine. Right, okay. My favourite emotion engine anecdote, which was from developers who said the only emotion they got from it was despair in developing for it.
Yeah, that's about right.
But now they're revealing the new
Cell.
next-gen processor, the Cell, which, again, generated a lot of despair from developers. But
Yeah, not really taken advantage of for many years to come, in spite of what this conference is almost putting out towards the audience.
But Ken's looking very happy about it.
Yeah. So, I mean, the Cell processor was in development like pretty much right after the PlayStation 2 had shipped. And it was, you know, they had that joint partnership with IBM and possibly Toshiba, but they were working on graphics as well. But they had their design studio in Texas, I guess, where they were working on creating the Cell, and they spent years on this thing. And Ken...
Forsyth.
It sounds like he had some rather interesting like insights. Like, he wanted like a specific number of SPEs because symmetry is beautiful, he said to the engineering team, and just kind of like made a lot of like arbitrary demands on what he wanted out of this thing. And it sounds like it was quite a challenge.
It's funny, the symmetry that you're talking about. The end Silicon did not have the symmetry. They disabled two of the units.
Them,
well,
yeah.
one of them, I
One
think,
of
and
them,
the
I
other one
think.
was doing like security, like DRM.
Something like that,
processes.
Yeah, it's funny because hackers actually re-enabled the 8th SPU for Linux and stuff like that. And, you know, obviously later on in the day when the yields were better on the processor, you know, it probably would have been functional on just about all of them, I would have thought.
Yep. Do it on the old ones though, and you get the yellow light of death. So, yeah, this is kind of a fascinating thing.
I mean, it's leaning a lot on the PlayStation history, though, at this point. So people talk about arrogant Sony. It makes sense, though. That's a lot of PS2s that were sold, given the worldwide shipping units that they just presented. It makes sense that they would come into this thinking, we're going to blow the competition out of the water. But given the games that are going to be shown and what is eventually shown...
So, you know, I think Mr. Kutaragi will go on for quite some time, but... And that, you know, before we continue there, it's like you see he puts up this backwards compatibility slide, which is kind of fascinating because we know where Sony is at the moment. But yeah, the PS3 launched with the idea was full hardware backwards compatibility, but the system launched with a flaw that was patched. But if you guys remember when the PS3 launched, if you played PS2 games on it, the scaler, it was set to scale improperly. So like one of the fields or something that it was like simulating was like reversed. So everything basically looked like terrible.
Oh gosh.
They fixed it with a firmware update, but like when it launched, PS2 games didn't look correct at all when running on a PS3.
And that's a huge oversight. My
It was a
goodness.
big oversight.
I think what's surprising about this presentation is they're really going hardcore on the specifications and the technology.
Yeah. We're going to see it later when NVIDIA's what's his name? Jensen
Huang.
Jensen Huang comes out, but that's full-on technical specs, things that they they parade nowadays at modern conferences as well. Scorpio was big on it, talking about 320 gigabytes per second bandwidth. But here they're actually talking about like the audio, the units. They give out a GPU and CPU diagram and saying what units it's made of. That's something that you wouldn't really see these days. But Cell was so unique that I think they needed to justify it to an audience that's used to a CPU just doing discrete tasks and not being some sort of like amalgam vector processor.
Yeah, I mean, this is definitely in the period where gen on gen you would see a vast leap in capabilities, and I think they actually do a pretty good job here in showing the power of the Cell and what it can potentially do, and they do an awesome job of showing the PlayStation 3 games to the point where they're not PlayStation 3 games.
Yeah. So maybe at this point we should skip ahead a little bit, because I think they're going to continue to rap on about the Cell, which is cool, but you know, you get some graphs here.
But I think it's interesting that they can show the floating points of the competition, even though this thing hasn't released yet. That is extremely negative campaigning about your competition at this point. I'm surprised.
Is it accurate though?
I mean, probably. Yeah. But I mean, this is a slide maybe made by IBM themselves, who would have information on these things. I mean,
well, keep in mind that IBM was like in Microsoft went to IBM deep when the Cell was still being developed and basically requested IBM make a Power PC core for them as well, and that's how they came up with the tri-core thing. So I guess it's known now, thanks to the book written by one of the IBM guys, was essentially, I'll post a link to the book in the description here, but essentially like they were working in the same building. Like there was Microsoft guys on one floor with IBM, and then there was the Sony was in-house with IBM at that point. And they were kind of keeping that like fact from each other, that they were essentially bringing their work they did on the PS3 core, the Cell core, and using it on developing the 360 CPU.
Interesting that they talk about memory bandwidth here, but they don't talk about the very, very important setup that the memory was split between XDR.
Oh, that's right. That was a big problem
in PS3, and a lot of developers, it caused them a lot of pain that we'll see down the line in ports of Fallout 3 and whatnot.
10 teraflops for movie rendering.
Oh yeah, definitely.
The other thing, of course, about memory bandwidth is saying that the PlayStation 3 had memory bandwidth advantage over 360, but when you actually saw the games, you know, stuff like alpha transparencies and whatnot, the RxX really struggled compared to Xenos.
Yeah, they're not talking about, obviously, about the not the ESRAM, the EDRAM implementation at the time, giving, you know, Microsoft, you know, keen advantage on bandwidth for a lot of things.
Yeah, so I think we should jump ahead here to the next part here, where I believe, yes, there he is.
Jensen, legend. And I'm particularly enjoying the kind of Spy Who Loved Me era safari suit look that Roger Moore sported so well.
Yeah, these days he's rocking the Terminator 2 leather jacket everywhere.
Yeah.
So.
It's a good look. I could go for that.
Definitely. But yeah, this is interesting because, well, behind the scenes, things weren't good on the GPU side of the PlayStation 3.
No, that's right. Like everything that's out there suggests that Toshiba was essentially working on the graphics processor for PlayStation 3 as they did on the PS2, and it basically sounds like that kind of hit a dead end. It didn't work out. I don't know all the business details there, but Sony basically came to Nvidia well after the Cell was already in development and tried to work with them to create what would become the RSX. So Nvidia had a lot less time to essentially turn around a product for use in the PS3. I think it kind of shows, to say the least.
Biggest problem in the PS3, next to certain things about like the RAM configuration being split, is the lack of GPU processing. It's not exactly powerful in the places it needs to be.
So obviously Microsoft had access to what was a cutting-edge Radeon part.
Yeah.
And we've got kind of like a GPU from NVIDIA that's, a generation behind, effectively. No unified memory outlook there.
No unified shaders or anything like that. Still split between Texel and...
And the chip itself was essentially a 7900 GT.
Like a cut-down version of the 7900? Yeah.
Yeah. But I guess what happened was that NVIDIA had to come up with something very, very quickly.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
But the irony is, of course, that the PlayStation 3 was kind of delayed anyway, wasn't it?
Yeah, only if they had taken that time to bump up the GPU specs.
Yeah, I think in this conference, I guess we'll see, but it's didn't they say like, oh, we're launching next spring or something?
Ooh, we'll
like,
look. Yeah.
And I know from what IBM has said, the original target was to launch PlayStation 3 in fall of 2005.
This is wonderful, by the way. This
Oh yeah.
this doesn't make much of any sense, but I love it.
Oh, and we're about to see a trend here. You see Spider-Man up there. He's gonna make a few appearances.
Yeah, and the text and everything.
Exactly. Yeah, the Spider-Man font was the PlayStation
That's
3
right.
font, and Spider-Man himself makes a few appearances in this particular conference. And there's one. Well, we'll wait until it actually happens, but it's. The cameo appearance of Spider-Man is it's unmissable, isn't it?
Yeah, that's what I recall. And the thing though is like, what's funny to me about Spider-Man now is like, this was like 2 reboots ago.
Yeah.
Like Spider-Man has been rebooted twice since the PS3 was revealed.
And I still think the first film's special effects hold up pretty
Yeah,
well.
no,
And
it's
the second film as well.
They're nice films. I like them. They're all right. They're good.
You see, what I'm liking about Jensen here is that he isn't beholden to the auto cue, which is.
You're right. Actually,
Yeah.
he's a better speaker. It looks like he's really. That's cool.
Yeah. It's not the Jensen that we know today, though.
No.
Definitely.
No.
This is interesting. I got to point out right away. There's 2 things that NVIDIA talks about. 128-bit pixel precision is because they had access to doing actually, internal HDR rendering on GPUs now, which was big in the PC space at this time. AMD didn't bring out HDR compatible cards for a while, so games would have patches to have HDR, and you would never get them on AMD hardware. And
That's
also 2K by 1K resolution. How many games are 1080p on PS3, John? How many?
I don't have any off the top of my head counts, but there's probably less than 50.
Yeah.
There's a whole kind of discussion to be had about the 1080p dream on the PlayStation 3, and it kind of started off so well with Ridge Racer.
That's the thing, right? They launched with Ridge Racer 7, which was native 1080p, 60 frames per second, and it was still kind of a port of Ridge Racer 6, but it looked awesome.
It was incredible. I loved it.
I think that's the thing to focus on in a console, hitting your marks, keeping your
Now,
frame rates.
another thing I need to check on is, I can't recall because I didn't have a 1080p screen at the time, but another game that launched with PS3 was Blast Factor, which was actually from our friends doing all the remaster work at Bluepoint. Ooh. That was their first game. And I think, and I need to double check, but I'm fairly sure that was also native 1080p, because it's a fairly simple indie downloadable game, but it was, so the PS3 launched with some 1080p titles for sure.
Okay, so I really like this bullet point that we've got here, incredible system throughput. Now, if we take the literal meaning of the word incredible,
yes,
kind of, it works, but it's kind of strain credibility in many ways.
Indeed.
But
I also noticed here, it looks like he has a PlayStation 2 era iToy camera there in front of him.
Yeah, they end up using this later in the conference at a certain point when demonstrating the cell processor. So, yeah.
A kind of constant in Sony has been the work of Dr. Richard Marks.
That's right.
Who's done some phenomenal stuff, and he actually makes an appearance further on in this video here.
Here we go, yeah.
This is the question. Is it actually as good as 2?
Yeah.
GTX 600.
Yeah.
6800 Ultras.
All I'll say, incredible system throughput with the emphasis on incredible. As in straining credibility.
I mean,
isn't this what the Metal Gear Solid 4 like TGS demo was running on, like dual 6800s?
I don't know if it was actually dual 6800s or dual 7800s.
Oh yeah,
GTXs
it might have been.
point.
It might have been 7800
remember,
GTXs.
It would explain a lot that is eventually shown for that gorgeous looking demo that when it came out. I really would love to see the 60 hertz footage of that.
Yeah, I think we all would. But yeah, so what we know now about the RSX, what do you say? Can it be more powerful than 2 6800 Ultras? Depends how bad the SLI implementation, I guess.
Yeah. At that time, atrocious. Let's be honest. But I think in terms of nominal power, it's going to be hitting there in later PS3 titles as they end up utilizing Cell to make up for shortcomings in it. But for the first launch titles, I don't think so.
I mean, Jensen here is looking really happy.
Yeah, he does look happy about this. Oh, I like this as well, how they have the direct comparison here with number of transistors.
Notice how they do not talk about the ATI graphics that were coming on the 360 yet.
The Athlon FX55, though.
Wow. Complex is italicized there. So
yeah. Another straining credibility moment.
Interesting
Actually,
stuff.
a slight little aside, but I'm pretty sure the 360's GPU would have more transistors than the RSX, just given the ED RAM being on die, right?
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Yeah.
Oh, that 7800 GTX demo on the bottom there. I forget the name of it. You can still download it on the NVIDIA website, by the way.
Do they still run?
I don't know. No, you can download it, bro.
Yeah.
That would have been another interesting and possibly suboptimal PS3 port. Then.
Should we skip ahead then?
Yeah.
So what else is next? More
God, he's
still
just
there.
going.
Oh, okay.
Here we go. Here we go. This is good.
Okay, so jumping ahead, just sort of fast forwarding a little bit here. I think this next sequence is rather fascinating because he's bringing up Tim Sweeney on stage here to demonstrate Unreal Engine 3.
Yeah, and Tim Sweeney looks exactly as he looks today. It's kind of bizarre.
He's ageless.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You can find him on Twitter.
So the thing, this is funny in retrospect because we all know that Unreal Engine 3 went on to dominate that generation. It was a very popular choice, but it was kind of an Achilles heel for the PlayStation 3 for a while.
Also, really important to note as this demo is starting, they'd already shown off Unreal Engine 3 a number of times and a number of titles at
That's
this
true.
point. And its original showing was just gobsmackingly gorgeous.
It was basically the Gears of War style map with
Yeah.
showing all the technique.
So it's easier for us to see in our feed, but there are many, many drops in frame rate already as this is starting. This is
Yeah, so what do you guys think? You think this was legitimately running on a PlayStation 3 dev kit, like an early kit?
looking at the real-time shadow maps causing such frame rate drops, I can actually see it. A lot of games did not end up using real-time shadow mapping in the early Unreal Engine 3 titles, so seeing it here is, yeah, it does make sense.
Yeah, and I can't see Tim Sweeney wanting to be associated with fakery.
No.
Oh, yeah.
It's not really his deal whatsoever. And, you know, you look at this and it's, in terms of how Unreal Engine would play out across the generation, it's a surprisingly low-key presentation really, compared to some of the stuff that would follow. I mean, later on down the road, they would switch to cinematic-style demos that were just kind of exported from the Unreal editor.
I mean, had UT3 been announced at this point, though? I don't think so. So this is using assets that would eventually go in there.
Yep.
And a lot of, you know, Unreal Engine 3 hallmarks. You can see, like, the foggy depth of field in the distance, giving everything that look.
That hazy look.
That hazy look. You see some good stuff, like programmable shaders for the glow there, you know. I think
it was a step forward for sure in terms of rendering. Like, it doesn't hold up that well, but at the time it was really something.
You also have to contextualize it in terms of the PlayStation audience. They hadn't been seeing programmable shaders in games before.
That's true.
So this is completely new in that aspect.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is quite interesting though, looking back in retrospect, how long it took for Unreal Engine 3 to kind of mature on the PlayStation 3. And it kind of all seemed to sort of come together after they actually did their own PlayStation 3 title.
Yeah. Which I guess they did Unreal Tournament 3 in 2007, and other developers wouldn't necessarily even catch up to that for, you know, couple years after. I'd say it was like 2009 era where we really started to see some pretty decent Unreal Engine 3 games on PS3.
I mean, I'm weird in arguing that I would say you wouldn't get any good looking Unreal Engine 3 games on any platform until that time, but
oh well, yeah. So while we're talking Unreal Engine, if we want to reflect back on what do you guys think made the best use of Unreal Engine 3 last generation?
Gears of War 3.
Yeah, that's probably mine as well.
That would be my pick for that. It was just a masterpiece in using the engine and how mature the engine was, and the kind of just the whole post pipeline at that point was just incredible, I think.
Yeah.
And you actually see it on Xbox One X running at 4K, native 4K. And it, you know, obviously the assets are of their generation, but it holds up.
It does.
The kind of density in the detail there, it holds up at 4K.
I've recently seen it in 4K, and there's a lot of little tricks that I didn't see originally when I played it. There's actually like use of screen space effects, like for reflections.
Oh yeah, we noticed that, like very basic screen space stuff for some of the fire.
Really cool little things that they managed to put at the end of the generation. Yeah,
it's not the top end here, but I would also venture to say that Mirror's Edge is still one of those games that really holds up well because they use their own lighting solution, pre-baked, sort of GI.
It'll be timeless, I think.
It's a beautiful game.
Yeah.
It still holds up.
The PC version, though. Oh, well, there's two interesting takes on Mirror's Edge. There's the
Sure.
Xbox One X, which has the HDR rendering.
Yep.
But it is still 30 hertz. And then you have the PC version, which is much, much smoother, higher frame rates, plus it has all of the physics.
All the Apex physics
All the
stuff.
Apex physics. One thing I'm not sure of, though, is whether it still has problems with like early Unreal Engine 3 streaming issues with stuttering.
It does.
It
may
does.
still have that.
Yeah, but
Right, yeah.
But it's mostly limited to the elevators, which
that's fine.
So
And the stuttering, I don't think is a problem on X.
No, well,
because
no.
It's got that huge RAM disk, which they can...
yeah,
snap
and
it
in general, Unreal Engine 3's like streaming worked really well on the 360. Like most games didn't have serious stuttering or hitching. Like you would get some texture draw in, but there wasn't a lot of skipping.
that was the thing. That's right. Unreal Engine 3 texture draw time.
Yep.
Huge complaint for a long, long period.
So what are we looking at now? I can't actually see
Vegas
what's
Corporation?
Yeah.
What is that?
It's all bloomed out in this footage here.
Oh, this is...
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Here we go.
I think this next part is when the conference starts to heat up, so to speak, and things get a little bit. It starts. So it's Phil Harrison, right? You guys remember Phil Harrison?
Oh yeah,
he was great.
Yeah, I do remember the UK Resistance website where
Oh no.
they were just mercilessly mocking him after this event. But once again, check out the suit. This is incredible. This is awesome. Now, the other thing I'm noticing here is, again, the auto cue.
Yeah.
The furtive glances to the auto cue. It really does.
He keeps doing it.
It reminds me of the concert from the Blues Brothers where the police are closing in. They're just sort of wondering how long they can get away with it. And it's kind of quite apt.
Yeah.
For what is about to happen next, where, well, this is the thing, isn't it? I mean, the big controversy about the PlayStation 3 reveal here at E3 2005 was the extent to which there was stuff in there which was, basically complete fantasy.
Yeah.
The CG stuff.
I think we're going to be lucky, though. This next segment is one of the ones that I think is probably on real-time hardware. It showcases things that look realistic at the same time as being...
Yeah, but this is the thing. There is some really nice stuff here, which we do think this is real time. Right?
But this right here, that's the PlayStation 2 demo.
Right.
Which
yeah.
is also great.
Which is real.
By the way.
Yeah.
Really good.
And yeah, this is great. This is cool. It's a 60 hertz PS2 water demo, and we saw that same kind of water in Baldur's Gate Dark Alliance on the PS2, thanks to the very talented Ezra G's back.
Yeah.
But now it's here we go.
And there's already hallmarks of it being real time beyond the fact that it's just one duck in there. Those shadows are most definitely not real time. They're baked.
Reflections kind of updated half rate.
Yeah, you can look at it right away, right underneath the duck itself.
Mm-hmm. But this is the thing that kind of frustrates me a bit, because everything that is real time that we suspect was running on actual PlayStation 3 hardware is tainted by what is to follow. You don't know what is real and what isn't.
Exactly. At this point in the conference, they haven't done anything ridiculous yet. This is still okay, this is a legit tech demo.
I mean, other than small indie titles, though, you don't see a lot of AAA games on the PS3 360 hardware generation utilizing physics in an intense way like this. No SPH fluid simulations, lots of cloth. It's pretty rare. It's nice.
Who was it that did an actual version of this?
This was Sumo Digital with Super Rubber Dub.
Super Rubber Dub. Yeah, they actually turned this into a game. That's just unbelievable.
Which had a sub-native 1080p resolution. I
think
it was
you're right.
1600 by 1080 possibly. But yeah, now they're actually just throwing in more stuff, and the idea here is to show the simulation prowess of the cell processor.
Exactly.
And this is a great demo, I think.
I think it's wonderful. Cool. Yeah.
And of course, he has to make the joke about LOD, lots of ducks.
Yeah.
What are you gonna do?
To be fair, he did get a sizable laugh.
Yeah, that's true.
From the audience, which is quite remarkable, bearing in mind the nature of the gag and the audience. But he's very happy with himself.
You can see he looks genuinely excited about what he's showing, that's cool. He's excited about this.
Yeah.
If only they could have ended the conference a little earlier.
The ducks, the highlight of my conference.
Stop with the ducks. Oh, okay. So they're bringing up the venerable Richard Marx.
Yeah, he's awesome. I mean,
He does great work.
We're seeing stuff here which is essentially object manipulation with camera, with an iToy camera.
Yeah, he's using a PS2 iToy camera. You saw him adjust it right there.
And I actually saw ECTS. I think it was in 2000.
This is particularly good looking, by the way.
They were using some kind of PlayStation Move type devices, early prototypes way back then. It was really impressive stuff. I mean, Richard Marx is so ahead of the curve here.
And you see, people say like the Wii hadn't been announced yet, and nobody knew about the motion control stuff.
Well, exactly.
And they say like, oh well, Sony just copied them, and I'm sure that there was some degree of that there. But to me, this shows that Richard Marx and them were at least already thinking about and working on projects designed to manipulate objects, either using a hand or like motion controls. Like that's basically Kinect right there.
Yeah, but
like
it's just
early.
It's just really frustrating and disappointing that they kind of ignore his work, and we end up with 6-axis.
Yeah.
So it doesn't quite compute from my perspective. And I mean, PlayStation Move controller was ahead of its time.
Yeah, at the time, those were excellent.
Yeah, and it's kind of holding on for dear life now, but it's not really
not
good
quite
enough
there. Not anymore.
for the VR.
For VR.
VR, yeah.
Yeah. So what new treats has he got in store for us here? I'm kind of...
Oh, yes.
Oh, yeah.
the leaves. Okay.
This would never be in a PS360 era title. I mean, it's an interesting technical demo, but we did not see large physical manipulations like this in almost anything.
So he's talking about they did a demo on PlayStation 2 which was feather-based.
Yes.
Yes.
And then they've moved to leaves for PS3. Now, I haven't seen that PS2 demo, but it strikes me that feathers are harder to render than leaves.
Well, it's just like an alpha texture, and there's less of them.
Right, okay.
But yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
But you would see this stuff in more modern games, though, with like vector fields and GPU particles. The most recent Battlefront, for example, does this.
That's true.
I think on the not Tatooine, Naboo levels. Looks good.
Yeah.
To me, though, I see this and I think, oh, this is where they got the idea for Flower.
Yeah.
Right.
Even though it doesn't push anything quite like that.
I mean, I really like the fact that they're using exotic hardware to do stuff that we haven't seen before. So, the cell processor was, it was kind of like Sony's last hurrah when it comes to
unique hardware.
Unique hardware powering a games machine. I mean, it would backfire badly, but...
This is one of the first questionable ones. I'm not sure if this is real time.
So the game was supposed to be 8 days, is that right?
Something like that? I think so.
Yeah, that explosion.
The explosion, no. It does have that kind of like weird Uncharted 1 pineapple-y looking explosion. Like,
yeah.
It's not opaque, there's no...
Exactly.
Yeah.
But it kind of looks like something from Babylon 5.
Oh, yes.
Doesn't it?
Season 1.
When they were using Amiga toasters to render up their visuals. But yeah, there is that kind of aspect to it where, GPUs just don't render like that.
No. There's no like billboard twitching and movement with the camera. It looks, it could have just been a 3D mesh that they brought out, but this is the first time I think, I'm not sure if this is real.
The emphasis here again is on physics though, which wasn't really the emphasis of the last generation at all.
No.
Remember LucasArts went hard on the physics with stuff like Star Wars, DMM, the digital molecular matter. They had that canceled Indiana Jones game that they showed with like breaking wood and stuff. It was cool.
He's got to be careful with those collars he could take off.
Man, Indiana Jones.
I think he's wearing a paper airplane around his neck.
Of course, Phil Harrison now is at Google, working on Google Yeti, which we believe is a gameplay over IP system.
Interesting.
Which I'm kind of fascinated to see.
He had a tenure at Xbox as well, right?
Yeah.
Did a stint there.
Yep.
Pretty famous for it.
Project Spark. I think he was involved with that. Yeah.
Which was essentially Microsoft's take on Little Big Planet. That makes sense that he would do. Oh, here we go. Alfred
Spider-Man.
Molina.
Well, a kind of offshoot of Spider-Man. We've got Spider-Man's arch nemesis, Dr. Octopus, represented in real time on PlayStation 3 hardware, apparently.
This is interesting. They probably scanned him in for this, and but all the acting performance itself, I would imagine, is keyframed. I don't think they would have put a rig on him to get him up for this, because the scene they end up showing later during the conference is a real-time scene in the movie itself.
The animation here is definitely hand.
Yeah.
done by hand. It's not.
Showing off some subsurface scattering there on the ears and everything. That's cool.
I think this is a rather realistic demo. Like the hair itself is rather simplistic.
Very.
I mean, the shading is cool for the time period, but like image-based reflections was like, I think there was like demos already in like 2003, maybe late 2002.
Yeah,
for
like
that.
the Radeon, the 9700 Pro had some image-based reflection demos, I think. With a background a lot like that.
It's interesting to see, though, that the emphasis here is on kind of transmedia, you might call it, where they're trying to merge gaming and their movie properties.
It's almost like Microsoft's TV initiative with the launch of the Xbox One, and they both stumbled with this. Maybe not the best idea.
But, let's put this into context. It's not massively impressive in the here and now, but 2005, we wouldn't have seen anything like this.
Not yet.
In terms of character, like facial detail, the geometry on his face. What's the name of the actor's face?
Alfred Molina.
Alfred Molina, yeah. It's wonderful looking. It's still really good for even a game today.
They're using a light probe for the scene.
Yeah, that nice, what looks like an area of light reflection in his eyes, but obviously isn't. But,
So what they've done here is they've transplanted him into the E3 arena from which they're doing this presentation.
Very cool.
And he's doesn't seem too impressed. Still a lot of squinting and
A lot of, 1,000-yard stare. I think everyone's going to be feeling that later, though.
well, again, it looks great, doesn't it? I mean, I'd have been really pumped seeing
Oh,
this
yeah,
in
see
2005.
the applause there. And he's like, yeah, of course, this is amazing. Applause there.
Yeah. I thank you. So where do we go next from here?
Another Spider-Man 2 demo?
Quite possibly.
We can't have enough Spider-Man.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yes.
This is interesting. Rendering without a GPU. Now, I'm curious at this point. You said the Toshiba deal might have gone south, or to make the GPU itself. And is this when they were trying to think about how they could work without a GPU at the time? Because this is all rendered apparently on cell,
with filtering.
Filter textures, it's kind of cool to see just all
Do
the
we
cell
think it's
stuff.
real? I kind of can't imagine they would want to fake it.
Yeah, it's not.
I'm sure it's just a tech demo, so
Yeah.
it's very, very likely to be a realistic thing.
Yeah, and if you look at flight simulators from the time, this is rather standard looking, but it's all on a CPU, so it's very interesting.
That's what's impressive about it. Yeah, it's just there's no like actual like models or objects in the environment there. It's just a terrain map.
Yeah.
But with sky.
Yes, with a nice sky. That reminds me of Turok.
Doesn't everything remind you of Turok?
Reminds you of everything.
Yeah. Okay, now this is very last generation looking. Like this just has the look of a PS3 or 360 game.
Those kind of low res baked shadow maps, incorrectly shaded things in the shadow map regions. This could easily be a launch title in my opinion.
It'd be a good one, I think. Well,
Yeah.
then again, if you think about, if you actually think about the PS3 launch titles, there was some good stuff there.
I would say if you look at what Rare did with Cameo on the 360 the same
Cameo.
year, that looks a lot better than this.
This is true. Yeah, this is like, well, that's interesting. That was like that weird period where there's a lot of new graphical effects coming out, like parallax mapping, per object blur, extensive use of depth of field. And that demo, in spite of, it really doesn't have a lot of that,
Nope,
actually.
exactly. Which is more accurate to what a lot of these games would look like that generation.
True.
And at the risk of preempting what is to come, MotorStorm was awesome for a launch title on PlayStation 3. What it was doing there was just
That's
phenomenal.
true. That was a launch title in Europe, wasn't it?
Yeah.
It was not in the States. So MotorStorm came out in Japan first, and I imported a copy. Oh, here we go. Look at this.
So this is, now obviously this is not running on PlayStation 3, but at the same time it's running in real time on something, because we can see basically adaptive sync tearing.
Yeah, and you can also see a lot of sections where the shadow maps are like drawing incorrectly and they're flickering a bit. It's real time on something, but definitely not a PS3.
I mean, there are certain aspects of the rendering that are of the era, but if you saw something like this today, you'd still be quite happy with it, wouldn't you?
Yeah, it's a pretty good looking game for 2005.
And this tech demo does look better than, I would say, like Grand Theft Auto 4 and the games that would follow that were open world. Certainly Saints Row.
Now, what they have got the advantage here is that the viewer is fixed in place.
Yeah,
They-
exactly.
They teleport him about in a couple of places, but it is just about the fidelity of the simulation, really, isn't it?
Yeah, and the density of objects and moving characters. I can't imagine this running well on a PS360 hardware. If it was, no.
Might work on a 360.
Yeah, good point.
But, you know, there was a pretty big focus on simulation, not quite physics, I would have thought, but, you know, Assassin's Creed, you can kind of see the sort of genesis of what they
Yes.
are aiming for with this class of
That's a
hardware.
good point.
And that is another game, actually. You play it on Xbox One X.
Oh yeah, it's stunning.
Kind of holds up. When you're in the cities, when you're outside, it's a bit of a disaster. But
It's a nice special case too, where they upgraded things beyond resolution, right?
Here we go.
Spider-Man is back with special special guest appearance from
Gran Turismo
Gran
cars.
Turismo.
Yeah.
Like this, like what? This whole thing is
one
baffling
of
to
those
me.
strange transmedia things that I thought was a wonderful idea at the time. But when I think Spider-Man, I definitely think high-performance sports cars. So
How did they not make a Spider-Man and Gran Turismo like crossover game?
Well, I just can't get my head around that. It's such an obvious tie-up.
no, but the question is this real time what we're seeing?
Oh, certainly.
Oh,
There's kids. Look at the rendering
look at-
quality.
oh, wow.
It's amazing.
amazing.
I think the interesting thing here also is how the Spider-Man CG doesn't hold up anymore.
No,
It does not.
It's not good at all. But yeah, the whole concept of this. I mean, you know, but again, you know, it is a product of its time, 2005.
In some ways, I have to say though that I think Insomniac's actual Spider-Man game kind of looks better than this.
I think in terms of just color direction, well,
Yeah. I'm really looking forward to that title. I have to admit, it looks phenomenal. But yeah, you're right. It kind of doesn't really hold up.
No. Look
But
how
yeah,
happy he is about
he's
that.
delighted. Absolutely thrilled.
he's in on the secret. That's what it is.
But, you know, I'm kind of, well, you know, obviously there is more to come that, I mean, this is obviously fakes, and you would have thought so at the time.
Mm-hmm.
But what is to come, obviously, that was vastly more controversial. And what kind of sort of interests me is the thought process behind the content.
Yeah.
The content of this particular media briefing, where they must have gone in with a deliberate agenda to say, right, okay, we're going to show some stuff that we kind of know the hardware isn't capable of at this point. So it's kind of, you know, this is what rankles so
Yeah.
many years on, doesn't it?
And
It feels like they're basically like they're very careful with their words and trying to say this is our vision for the PlayStation 3. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they're not directly saying this is running real time on PlayStation 3, except in cases like the Unreal Engine demo.
they use the word potential as well. You know,
Yeah.
like it's unfair to the audience. I would argue, though, very unfair.
It's very
Yeah.
deceptive.
Yeah.
This, and you know, you always hear this about the Sony conferences, but the PlayStation 2 demos, if you actually go back to them and see what they were doing and see them actually running, like those were legitimate. There was nothing like faked about the PS2 launch. It did look amazing at the time, but they more than matched it, and it was all like field rendered 60 frames per second stuff, and it's not that unrealistic. But this is the
coming up.
conference that kind of really.
So we were having a discussion about this the other day, and I was saying that the Final Fantasy Ballroom demo
Yeah.
was fakes, and you were saying it was actually real
Oh yeah,
time and real.
absolutely, it's quite real.
Wow.
If you see it again, you'd be like, "Oh, wait, I can see exactly how that would be real." I think the bouncer actually came out and exceeded what they showed in that demo
Yeah, definitely.
at 60 frames per second. It was amazing.
It's also interesting what's coming up and how they present it. It's just trailer after trailer after trailer
Oh,
with
yeah.
little context. It's I don't think they would get away with that in the middle of a conference these days, but maybe at the end of one. Show off the games.
Yeah, Kaz is back. The
Yeah,
legend.
Yeah.
So is this where it begins?
I think it's about to begin.
Yeah.
So, you know, Kaz introduces then another old familiar face from the time, Larry Probst from Electronic Arts. And he's going to show us Fight Night. But first,
Gosh.
yes, it's Kudo Tsunoda.
Yeah, this is also. So this is in Kuda's pre-Connect
Yes.
days. And it's a remarkable turnout. Once again, he's wearing the belt.
Yep.
It's looking awesome. And there's kind of, we were talking about this earlier, it's sort of almost a sort of mirror universe Phil Spencer look.
Yeah, he does have that.
Cut the hair.
It's like a rock star version of Phil in a way.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
Yeah.
So look, he is holding a PlayStation controller.
Yep, that didn't happen much later.
Yeah. This is also one of the demos that is, given what we're going to be seeing, I think it's real time. There's a lot of little discrepancies with the shown off 360 version.
So
like the frame rate.
This is before they had the post-processing stuff implemented, the excellent motion blur.
Oh yeah,
and the frame rate is low here.
Yeah.
So Fight Night actually came out some time after the 360 version.
Yeah, 360 came out in the summer of 06, I think, and PS3 it launched with it.
Right. Yep. And you know, if you were there watching this at the time, you'd have thought this was pretty awesome.
Oh yeah.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
There was nothing. I mean, when I think it was the demo on 360.
It was the demo.
That came out. I remember I was actually
mind-blowing.
I was actually at Criterion at the time looking at Burnout Revenge on 360.
Okay.
And everyone was watching that demo and playing that demo for Fight Night on 360, and it was like, wow, this is unbelievable.
I still think it looks pretty.
Yeah,
good.
it
does
holds,
look good.
it holds up, doesn't it? Yeah, but they are quite explicit here that this is running on real time on PlayStation 3 hardware, and we can kind of believe it because it's not as good as the 360 footage that follows.
Yeah, exactly. This is.
Oh yeah, they end the segment with a showing of the 360 version in a little clip, and
Well,
it
it's
looks
at least
kind of
it's
obvious.
a trailer.
Yeah,
they don't
true,
say
true.
specifically, but
Yeah, balance of probabilities.
yeah,
it
it looks a lot like the 360 version.
But, you know, again, you know, if we consider that everybody at the moment is gaming on their PlayStation 2s or their Xbox Ones,
original
Xbox, yeah, then this is just like unbelievable. And to be fair, the wow factor was still there, amplified when the actual 360 demo came out.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, again, right. So you know, this isn't fake. I don't think. I think it is real time.
Look at that shadow there.
Yeah, no, that's stifling. It's pretty intense. Even then, I think these facial animations are rather good looking for the day.
I think it's awesome.
Gosh.
I think the whole project is awesome. And if you can imagine what it would have been like to be a developer at the time, moving from PlayStation 2 to PlayStation 3, and you're capable of doing this, it's like massively exciting time.
And also very daunting.
Yeah, try and getting this running on the RSX eventually. That's daunting.
Yeah, maybe we should take another look at that at some point. I seem to recall that some of the effects were removed and
I recall that too. Yeah, it was stripped down a little bit.
It held up pretty much, but yeah.
Does this title on 360 use MSAA actually, John?
I'm pretty sure it does.
I think it's 4X MSA.
4X, yeah.
I think so.
Yeah.
And I think on PS3 it did not.
Yeah,
which was the difference.
None
It
at
had
all.
none.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean, in terms of the excitement level, I think if we'd been in that auditorium, we'd have all been pretty pumped at this point, seeing this kind of stuff running on new hardware.
I'm pretty pumped right now.
Look at that belt.
Yeah. I mean, somebody told him that would be a good idea, and he agreed. That's the kind of takeaway.
I still think it's better than bringing out Mexican wrestlers in your press conference, though. So.
Well,
change the world of entertainment, and the EA Studios.
he sure looks excited.
Yeah, he looks quietly confident, I would say.
Let's see what's next. Let's just.
Here's the part where you can show them showing off.
So yeah, then they show this trailer, which is pretty much what the 360 version would wind up looking like.
Yeah, the frame rate is obviously on a different level at this point.
It's got the nice motion blur.
There was never a PC port of this, was there?
No. Shame.
Much to my disappointment. Yeah.
So, you know, considering what I saw at E3 in 2005, if this is real time on 360, I mean, that's pretty awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure that was a rendered out trailer.
Yeah.
But
some sort of frame stepped rendered out trailer.
Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, there he is.
Still has the feature set.
And all the folks at Electronics Arts for being here today.
He's like got to be struggling to hold back like a huge grin at what's about to come, because I'm sure he believes that showing stuff like Motorstorm is like going to set the world on fire, and kind of does.
It kind of does.
Briefly.
Until they release the screenshots, and you just kind of think like, this can't be real. This is.
So at the time, I wasn't really in magazines or publishing, although I was at this E3. I was doing other things. But, okay, so let's talk about the aftermath. How quickly was it unmasked, what's about to follow?
I feel like within the next, after this happened, people on forums were already essentially discussing the reality of this, and there was the two camps. There was those of us that were skeptical, and then the others that were like running, like screaming, like this is the best thing ever. 360 is dead.
Right.
Okay, so Yoichi Wada comes up here from Square. It was Square Enix at this point.
Square
Yeah.
Enix. Mm-hmm.
So this is kind of like one of those infamous teases, I guess you could say, in E3 history, where they brought something to showcase the supposed power of the PlayStation 3.
But
it's Final Fantasy VII.
yeah.
So
Right, okay, yeah. Now, you actually used this 60 hertz source
yes,
for when we took an initial look at the Final Fantasy VII, the actual remake that is actually happening on PlayStation
exactly.
4.
I did a fun little video kind of like showcasing FF7 through the years, and this still kind of looks pretty awesome, I think.
Oh,
But
yeah.
clearly this is not representative of any actual real project.
In terms of like geometric density that they show.
They never said, Square never said that this was actually in development for PS3 at any point.
Yeah.
There's like, this is what we can do on PS3, and that's all they said. This was never like, we're making this now, which I think disappointed a lot of people. But
just look at that hair. My goodness, like barely
the
anything.
indirect lighting here is not good, though.
No, it's very
like non-existent.
It's
pretty
like
much.
extremely flat. This is the time before SSAO.
Yeah, exactly.
And things like that. So a lot of things, texture crevices and things would look rather flat. But I think in terms of animation and simulation of animation, it's pretty good looking when the characters are moving and they're like, secondary motion on their clothing and their hair. It's really good looking.
So we've got a 480i feed here, but you would have assumed that the original asset would have been 720 at least.
So
yet there's still some heavy aliasing that we can
and
see
there's still
here.
some slowdown. Like
Yeah.
actually, like during that pan up there, if you actually go through frame by frame, it skips frames. So, I mean, this could very well have been some tech demo running on a PC potentially that they put together.
Right, yeah. But it is quite fascinating to see what we would actually get from PlayStation 3 from Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Actually,
rather
Final
different
Fantasy
looking.
13 does look good. Like,
Oh.
admittedly,
The character models, I think, are
character
rather
models
fantastic.
and the world
Yeah.
looks good too.
Yeah.
But it doesn't run at 60 frames per second, obviously.
Yeah, and there's this little bit when he looks up, it's at 30
Oh, yeah,
FPS.
30.
I don't know what that's about.
And
There we
there
go
as
again.
well.
Yeah.
So, is it real time? Is it real time on something that would be PC related, or
That's what I'm thinking.
Right. I mean, at the time, we still don't have a firm idea of where dev kits were. I'm sure Square would have had them at this point.
Of course, they were a huge partner.
And EA obviously had something which they could actually physically show a game running, which, but this is like 18 months out before launch.
That's right, yeah.
Our partners have prepared a glimpse into this future to share with you today. So let's take a look at what fans have to look forward to.
So yeah, this
Far-flung future.
this here, this is an important moment because this is when they start to show demonstrations of supposed games.
Yeah.
And
yeah, this one is terrible.
Right off the bat, there's bounce lighting from the hood of this car onto its wheels. Like,
Right.
that
Yeah.
never happens in a game last gen.
Exactly.
I don't know about that.
It's got a very high polygon count as well on these cars, and like the details here
Yeah,
are
there's-
exceptional. The reflection work.
I think there's a point where they show the inner wheel of a car, and you can see like better than SSR level reflections in it.
Yeah.
It's like, this is so fake. Gosh.
But they, they did hold themselves back. It is 30 hertz.
Yeah,
This is
it's
true.
But they kind of didn't hold back
And a little
elsewhere.
wonky looking with the
Look at
car
that.
animation. Yeah, like that is so
Well,
good.
yeah, there was some the guy who
Like
did the
this right here.
physics. It's like sort of Benny Hill at the controls.
yeah.
Yeah, there we go with those nice reflections again.
So they obviously got in some top-tier talent to do the graphic side of things, but the physics guy, they just roped him in off the street or something.
Farmed him out. Yeah.
Oh yeah, I say. So this was the first teaser for Devil May Cry 4, when they basically had nothing to show yet.
Had MT Framework been shown off at this point at the 360 conference? That's an interesting question, because what they show at the end of this little teaser video definitely is not the final game art, let alone...
You remember Dead Rising, I think, was the first MT Framework game shown, and it looked very different initially in the screenshots.
Yeah,
more cartoony.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the classic non-committal trailer, where it's just random content under title.
Yep.
And
now this is another one that weirdly enough caused controversy. It's a Mobile Suit Gundam, or it's a Gundam related thing, and the fidelity here is well beyond what you would expect. But it's more like this game came out and it's terrible. It looks absolutely awful, runs horribly.
do you own it?
I do not.
No, that's a shame. We could have done some head-to-head on that.
Oh yeah,
that would have been interesting. But again, there are aspects of the rendering here which would hold up today, I think.
Yeah, those reflections there from the inside of that little warehouse. You wouldn't see that in many games at all. Yeah.
Oh, and here's another non-committal teaser from Namco. It's like,
Right.
yeah, we're working on Tekken.
These screenshots on IGN, my goodness, I looked at them and I could not imagine a generation where games looked like this. This is still above what we can do.
Yeah,
This is...
Tekken 7 doesn't look this good.
No.
This model quality.
But at the same time, we've just seen that Fight Night demo,
This is true. It's...
which
Okay.
is not beyond the bounds of reason, is it?
You're right.
But,
This is true.
Especially knowing, Namco was known for their technical prowess.
Yeah.
Right. So, well, this is fascinating, isn't it? It's because there's not even a name given for the game,
Right.
but we know it as Red Dead Redemption.
Exactly. So this was, I'd forgotten about this. It's basically a teaser for Red Dead Redemption, and I do think that this looks like an early test on their Rage engine.
Yeah, I don't know what kind of hardware it is on,
No.
but it looks rather realistic. I mean, you've got shadow maps, you see shadow acne,
Yep.
little stuttering in them and things like that.
Oh yeah, look at that.
They're really showing off what the engine can do. Time of day transitions.
The shadow maps
rarity for the
look
time,
like
anyway.
what you got in GTA 5, actually.
Yeah, they do look a lot like those.
So again, I mean, this is kind of obviously based on the quality of the final product. It is kind of
But not with
representative
those
of
wonderful, flapping
cloth
cloth
physics.
on his, or his hat either. It's
Overall,
also
though,
twinging a bit.
I think the final game looks better than that.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
by far. Yeah.
and even better on 360.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, much better.
Here we
Oh
go.
no.
Yeah.
This is it.
There are aspects of this that are aesthetically more interesting in the final game by far, and some animation things probably that don't look that great in this. But it itself is so beyond what anything could ever be made on PS360 generation consoles. It's a great trailer as well, though. I think really mood setting.
Yeah, this is a fascinating one, isn't it? Because there is some commonality in content with what we actually got, and I think in terms of what the engine delivered on PS2,
That
it was
explosion,
awesome.
that explosion had shadows being cast from it. That's
Oh, yeah.
no game even does that today almost.
Particle shadows.
Yeah, good luck at that.
Crisis 2 DX11 patch.
It works, yeah. Poorly, by the way.
Yeah.
So I'm sure one day the full story of what this demonstration actually was will come to light. But, I can't imagine that it's, designed to show what the actual PS3 game was.
I think it's kind of like that Crisis Core video, or a couple other, Dawn of War 2 also had a demonstration like this, where they want to have an idea what the gameplay is like, and you see the character ducking around, utilizing a bespoke first-person cover system. I don't think, and maybe an aesthetic that they were trying to get, but graphically this is...
And see, what's kind of really ridiculous about this is around the same time, Epic showed early stuff from Gears of War running on 360, and it was extremely poor looking in 2005. I mean, we know how it turned out, but it was choppy, it didn't look great, and then you compare it to this, but it's sad because Epic was actually being honest with their work, and
then this comes out.
And it's but I get the feeling that the developers that were working on this game were probably not too happy that this trailer was shown, just because it kind of gives... It sets the bar too high.
And if we look back to subsequent media briefings from Sony, whenever there was a guerrilla showcase, It was usually in real time.
Yep.
And I think the developer had a point to prove going forward. And so from that, I think from Horizon, they might have switched back to trailers.
Oh,
But
yeah.
even then, the trailers were representative of the
exactly.
actual quality of the
100%,
game.
yeah.
But in the direct wake of that, stuff like Killzone 3, I recall, we actually had a full 3D real-time demonstration at the E3.
Right at the beginning,
Yeah,
the
oh,
ice
yeah.
level.
Yeah, so, it was, I think it was, seems to me that maybe the studio put their foot down and said, look, we want to show what we're actually doing. You can't repeat this episode again. But, one thing which, well, that definitely doesn't apply to Polyphony Digital, who are the masters of the CG intro, aren't they?
They are indeed.
So what have we got here? It's kind of, I'd say the assets are probably actual assets.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I'm sure this was produced the same way they've always done their pre-rendered intros, where it's like it's all based on in-game assets, but they just like you get some nice motion blur and other pre-rendered effects added to the mix.
Lack of LODs on the cars, like you don't see them transitioning
Right.
ever as they're moving towards the camera, anything like that. Very nice. But in terms of rendering features of the time, a lot of this looks rather PS3 era to me. It still does.
The difference, I guess,
yeah.
is when you have replay angles in the actual PS3 games, they are
Yeah,
not
yeah,
60 frames per second.
Yeah, and we didn't get anything like this pit crew in the
No.
PlayStation 3 generation.
I don't think that type of animation though was introduced in Gran Turismo 4 though. Like they had a
Right.
really advanced animation system for the
cool,
time,
yeah.
like for like crowds and like drivers. It was amazing. So that seemed like a logical next step.
I can't wait to see what they do with PlayStation 5 because, GT Sport kind of demonstrated they've reached the point now where I don't think they need to do these CG trailers anymore.
No, not at all.
They really shouldn't do it, in fact. Well, hopefully they won't.
Yeah.
So that's it. Is that the end of the showcase? There's more to
No,
come.
there's
There
still
are
more to
We're
come.
still-
more trailers.
A rather famous one. I think it may be actually up next.
But I don't know. He's difficult to read, isn't he?
Yeah.
He must know at this point
Oh, yeah.
that the stuff that he's just presented has no relation to what was actually running on PlayStation 3 hardware.
Exactly.
And,
Oh yeah.
this
well,
is
this
an
is
interesting one.
It is, isn't it?
There's something wrong with the
feed.
The feed here, where it looks kind of like almost motion interpolated, but the frame rate is
Something's
so
wrong.
poor.
Yeah, I don't
in
think that's the
sections.
game itself. I think that's something going on with the feed.
Yeah, but
But okay, to introduce this is basically, it was like Project I-8 or something,
yeah.
but this is what became Resistance from Insomniac.
yeah.
So I think what's interesting here, obviously, is that the performance level is terrible, and but the feature set is very different to the final game.
There's a lot of
It does
things-
look different.
It does look different. I'm not sure if that's an aesthetic quality, but they're, like the shadows, even though these characters are, having real-time ones right now, most of the environment ones are still just baked ones. It does look like a PS3 era game in that way, definitely. Could have just been some track viewed sequence that they made up. Of
Yeah.
the first person, moving around.
But there was tearing in it, wasn't there?
Yeah,
Earlier
That
on?
may have been the video feed.
yeah, like
isn't
at
it?
Right,
the very
okay.
end. That
But keep
looks
in mind,
very-
Insomniac did some amazing stuff when they showed that first Ratchet and Clank game on the PS3 running at 60 hertz.
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Awesome.
Cool.
So,
Yes.
this is an interesting one as well, is it? Not?
So let's not spoil this yet, because I recognize. I think this is the one.
Right, maybe we should just sit back and enjoy the presentation of a game.
So this is a nice six. Well, not right there, but a lot of the footage here is 60 hertz.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
And the final game was 60 hertz.
exactly.
Yeah.
So for those watching, you might want to start thinking about this game. Did come out and it did run at 60 frames per second.
What could this be?
What could this be? This sure does look nice. I mean, the first answer anybody would give is like, "Hey, this is just Dynasty Warriors, right?"
Well, that's what I thought.
Which,
yeah.
by the way, this looks better than Dynasty Warriors 9.
Yeah.
Well, Dynasty Warriors 9 has some nice lighting, but man, oof, that performance.
Look at that hair physics. Wow.
Yeah. I don't know what this demo was, like what it was made on, I don't know. It's hard to say. Okay, that's clearly. Yep,
Yep, there
it
you
is.
go.
It's Neo.
Okay.
Announced in 2005.
And what year did it come out?
2017.
And when did it reemerge from hiding?
Oh, a couple years before. It was, yeah.
Just kind of disappeared. This
thing. This is weird. Look at this.
Yeah, we're kind of we've left Fantasyland now, and we're entering a kind of bizarre nightmare.
Yeah.
I mean, at least the character models look like
This looks
PS2
well,
quality.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
do. This looks like a PS2 game. This looks like Xenosaga, basically, like
does look
character
like
model
Xenosaga,
detail.
yeah.
Maybe the guy in the top right is being rendered on PS3.
Oh yeah.
And,
Well, I think the idea here is they're trying to say, hey, you can talk to these characters on your PS3 and they'll like interact with you, like Milo on Kinect.
Oh, remember Milo? This sequence here, though, the background characters and the environment, I'm not sure if it's actually PS3 quality. It kind of looks...
Identify.
This never came out.
Oh, now, okay, look at this. This is great. It's a Sonic Team production. I suspect most people don't remember this, but Fifth Phantom Saga was canceled, obviously, but...
But this is also another one where I think it's rather realistic.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you have
This looks-
stencil shadows, a bit of bloom, overuse of normal maps on every single object.
This to me looks like these guys like saw the technical demo for Fear, and they're like, "Oh man, we got to do that."
Yeah, there's a lot of these random shooters from this time period that were announced that had like very similar technical makeup, like Dark Sector. This one, there's also a number of other titles I forget the names of off the top of my head, but they ended up never coming out. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah, well, this one did.
Dark Sector did, but it's a
Oh,
different
yeah,
form.
very
Remember,
different, yeah.
it was very
Heavenly Sword definitely did.
yeah. Heavenly Sword came out, and it doesn't look like this.
Yeah, that-
Actually, the character models look better in the final game, but the actual like fluidity and level of detail here is
Or
a
the-
step above.
Does the final game have real-time shadow maps like this one does here?
Yeah,
in this
it
footage?
does.
Oh,
That's actually one of the reasons I believe it performs so poorly. The whole game uses real-time shadow maps,
yeah. I mean,
which was probably not the smartest thing to do back then.
on a launch title, I can't even think.
It wasn't a
many
launch
that-
title.
Oh, it wasn't?
came out in like August 2007 or something.
Oh, so quite a bit.
It was like 9 months or so later after launch.
It was a huge. It was so highly anticipated at the time.
Well, this and Lair from Factor 5 were the two big ones.
Yeah, and Warhawk. I think there was a
Yeah.
lot of hype for Warhawk.
Warhawk had some hype, but that kind of disappeared and reemerged as a multiplayer game.
Yeah.
Now, this stuff does exist in the final game, not looking this good, but this whole like large battlefield with the cannon. You use the 6-axis to control the cannonball.
Yeah.
Which, by the way, the 6-axis hasn't even been announced at this conference. That's the following year.
Are we still in the boomerang controller era, or did
This
they
is-
just not show any
They
controllers
did.
at all?
They did.
Oh,
we'll
they
see
did,
it. We'll
yeah.
see it. Here we go. So this is Warhawk.
This is another one that is, I think it's their production render. I think this is what they actually thought they could want to do with the game, because there's a lot that looks fine, but in terms of like geometric detail on the soldiers, the amount of shadows being cast everywhere, or just the amount of objects.
The environment is.
Yeah,
Yeah.
look at all those planes. My goodness.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Every one of them is controlled by a different player. It's a battle royale game with planes.
10 years before its time.
But they did actually. It was the SOCOM team. I can't remember the
Oh,
name. of the
Meg.
game. Meg.
Massive
Yeah.
action game. They
That
did.
was,
They did kind of.
You know, they did deliver.
It wasn't a battle
eventually.
royale, but it was the same kind of
No.
thing. And, oh, here we go. Look at this.
This is another one where it looks in certain sequences extremely real time
Like
of
that?
the era.
But
But
no,
this,
this, no way.
The first person sequences are one, like like a track viewed up sequence, and some of the simulation you see here, like when the glass breaks. My goodness, no game even has
Yeah, look at
glass like
this.
that nowadays. Yeah.
The animation. Now, actually, the way the hands in it with the guns reminds me of what Starbreeze did with
Yes.
the Darkness.
Yeah.
They had a lot of that, like.
moving around
yeah.
and like flipping up the guns. That's
was
a game
cool.
that really should get a PC
That's a
port.
cool game.
Oh my god.
The Darkness, the first one.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I liked it.
It looked nothing like anything I'd seen on.
Yeah, it was amazing.
Wow.
Yo, here we go. This is it.
Hold on tight. This is MotorStorm. And where do you begin?
I mean, this is the most insane looking thing at the conference by far, and it's so unrealistic. Like,
If a game came out looking like this now, I would also be questioning.
there we go.
it.
Particle shadows galore. Beautiful. Like, wow. It's like the
Smooth
motion blur quality, like the
Yeah.
complexity of the environments.
The deformation on a lot of the ground here being
It's like
completely geometric.
Yeah,
and-
geometric deformation, which happened, by the way,
Yeah,
in
it
Sega
does, it
Rally.
does. Yeah.
Yeah. Not like this.
No.
Look at the physics here. Watch this. Look at that.
Yeah. It does remind me of a NVIDIA demo from like the Fermi era, but even then that looked nothing. It's
But
nice.
beyond even the visuals, like what they're showing here in terms of gameplay is not feasible.
Oh, yeah, also the turbulence when
Oh,
it goes
the
through
turbulence,
the smoke,
yeah.
that's very realistic for the PS360 era. Oof.
And again, the final game was awesome.
It was
It's still
amazing
good.
looking. Yeah.
And you know, if they'd actually just showed
That.
something approximate to the final game, it would. You know, I remember when MotorStorm launched. It was the first game where I thought, well, maybe the PS3 is quite a bit more powerful than the Xbox 360 because there was nothing like it.
It was amazing, yeah.
Yeah.
And the only other game
That's the audience right there, by the way.
Yeah.
fully authentic logo though.
Yeah,
The
they got that
logo
much.
sort of persisted into the final code.
It kind of does a disservice to the developers because
Yeah.
the games that came out, Killzone 2, MotorStorm, really good looking games. You know,
Yeah, I
both
feel bad for them
demos,
like
yeah.
that.
The strength of Sony first party back then, even now, it's still
It's amazing, yeah.
phenomenal stuff they were doing and still do. But it's just,
Oh,
I don't know.
here he comes.
Yeah, he's back.
Gosh, that suit, I love it.
It is awesome, and he looks delighted. He is triumphant.
At which point in time did they actually start talking about like some of the strange multi-screen features and like the targeting of 120 hertz or things like that for the PS3? Like, didn't they say they were working on a demo?
Oh, here we go.
Oh,
There's
there
the,
it is.
There's the ID.
Here we go.
It looks pretty good. It looks pretty much like the final model.
Until you turn it
Until you
around.
turn it around.
See all those extra I/O.
We had the USB ports, of course, and the flip up. Yep,
That was there, yeah.
persisted into final.
It had the,
hardware.
oh, there we go. Look at this.
So we've got, well, you know, let's stop and take a look at this because it's kind of
Okay, yeah. So
there are problems here.
there's two HDMI outputs for one, so you could do a multi-screen thing. That didn't happen. There's the analog video out, which is the normal PlayStation thing. There's the Toslink like optical cable output for sound.
Okay.
There's three Ethernet ports, so it would essentially act as an Ethernet hub. That was the idea.
Okay.
And then it looks like a couple USB ports on the back, including 4 in the front.
The final model actually used this universal.
Correct, it does.
It does. Okay.
Yeah, and I guess I don't know 3 LAN ports.
Yeah.
It's, you know, maybe they were kind of envisaging some sort of networking hookup. I mean, we did actually see a GT demo that networked 4 PlayStation 3s for 240 hertz and 4K.
Beyond that, though, like on what is it? I guess on Gran Turismo 3 on PlayStation 2, you could actually like link up multiple PS2s and get like a multi-screen view of the game. I believe I remember doing something like this. It's like, I don't know. This seems like maybe they were thinking of continuing that. This probably could have happened, but I assume it was a price point issue, like including all that extra stuff on there.
The network ports I just don't understand. Obviously, that was pared back to a reasonable one.
Yep.
And then the dual HDMIs. Now, RSX would never have been able to service 2 HD displays. So quite what they were thinking of there, and the utility of it. You know, a console is built for the living room, which has one screen typically.
This is like a multimedia
This is
device
such a weird thing.
that even,
Yeah.
PC would have trouble contending with.
Yeah.
at that
We
time
get a better
period.
look at the back here. Yeah, kind of bizarre, but you know, overall the ID sort of stayed constant. The kind of George Foreman grille look.
Yep.
The flip top ports.
And then the final unit has that weird semi-transparent plastic.
Not sure what that's
Yeah.
about.
And then there's only a vent on the top there.
Yeah,
I think that was changed. I think Microsoft was like kind of like giving them guff over that at the time. Like, there's no vents on that thing. It doesn't work. It's not possible. And they were right.
Spring 2006.
Wow.
Yeah, a little bit
didn't happen.
underhand.
The whole conference is basically designed to, I think, attack the Xbox 360 before it launched. Like, this is like their whole like front.
There's certainly a lot of front. That's for
Yeah,
sure.
there is a lot of front. Look at that! Oh yeah.
Yeah,
There we go. He is,
This is the photo that you often see right there.
right there.
right.
He looks like a proud papa.
He is magnificent. I mean, you know, one thing you've got to say is that, you know, Ken Kutaragi, he just, you know, in terms of exotic hardware designs, in terms of, you know, producing his own vision for the future of gaming technology, we don't get that anymore. You know,
He was a great guy. He's done some amazing stuff.
but there was a significant level of hubris surrounding PlayStation 3 and massive underestimation of Xbox 360.
Yep.
And it's kind of bizarre how it all kind of flipped on the next generation.
It did
Yeah,
indeed.
and only saw Sony picking up towards the later half of, or 2009 or so, almost.
Yeah,
at
they
that
came
time
back
period.
and they did pretty well with it, but they were in a tailspin for a while. And that was kind of the beginnings of it, I'd say. We kind of went through most of the conference there.
So yeah, fascinating to see how it all turned out, really, and how at the end of the day, the main advantage of it was to supplement the poor GPU.
Yeah.
Yep.
There's that one slide where they say, take advantage of the system at hand with the RSX, but it ended up being the other way around.
Exactly.
Yeah.
All right, so I guess this was probably our longest video to date, just by the nature of the content. So if you made it to the end, congratulations. And thanks to you guys for joining me.
Yeah, and if there are any more crucial moments in gaming history like this that we can revisit, please do suggest that in the comments, because
Of
we
course.
kind of like to check that out. We could indeed go to the massive damage and the real-time weapons change of 2006.
That's right. We could do the sequel to this. We could look at Microsoft's 2005 presentation as well, which might be interesting.
Yeah, it's a nice contrast.
We could do that Microsoft conference where the Call of Duty controller stopped working and the guy was was basically pretending to play the game.
Oh, poor guy.
All manner of classic stuff. But I think we're going to leave it there.
Yeah, thanks for joining me, Rich.
No problem.
And it's great to have Alex with us today.
No, I'm very grateful. It was fun.
Great. All right, and if you enjoyed this video, be sure to like and subscribe as always, and follow us over on Twitter. And until next time, all three of us are signing off.
Thank you.